I think one of the first things we were thinking about is because of the process of cold pressing our juice, we do have a ton of pulp and powder. And besides selling that as a product, I think I'm just like putting this out in the universe. Maybe it will happen, like get some collaborators on this. But doing like a Skagit pancake mix.
Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 152 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with one of the owners of Bowhill Blueberries. Please welcome Audrey Matheson. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview local business owners, comedians, singers, and more. I dive into their backstory to find out how they got where they are, what are some of the tips for you to do the same, and find out where they are going. Tune in every week as I interview more of the people you see every day. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. How's your guys' week going? I hope it's going well. We've got another, had a pretty nice week. Got to go to the fair this last week. But as this is being recorded, this is the, of course, the Camano Voice. I did not go to the Stanwood Camano Fair as I probably should have. I went to the Skagit Fair. What's funny about the Skagit Fair, it's surprising that it's actually smaller, or at least it feels smaller than the Stanwood Camano Fair. And Skagit is definitely a much larger area and larger population than Stanwood Camano. Haven't fact-checked that, but it definitely seems like it. Anyways, it's just kind of funny that fair is so much smaller. I guess that's a shout-out to the Stanwood Camano Fair. Good job at what you're doing. Skagit Fair was fun. Had fun with the kiddos. But that was that. And then in other news, most of you have probably heard already about what's going on with the Stanwood Chamber and how it was closed. It's been closed down. Which the only reason I bring that up right now is I actually had interviewed Cassie Merritt. That was what today's episode was supposed to be. Obviously, with the closing of the chamber, that episode kind of became moot and point, and so now I have a locked up episode that will never see the light of day. Which I am bummed about. It was a great episode. It was fun to talk with Cassie. She's a fantastic person. She just had, she had a lot of excitement and energy and passion for what was going to be happening with the Stanwood Chamber. So, just feel bad for the chamber and kind of what happened there. But we hope that, in the future they'll be able to rebuild and kind of turn over a new leaf, as it were. So, anyways, but Camano Chamber is still here. And I'm on that board. So, if anyone is interested in joining, you can go to the Camano Chamber website. I'm now being a commercial for the Camano Chamber, so you're welcome. All right, jumping into this episode. Real quick, I just wanted to note, I did say at the beginning of the episode, I introduced Audrey as the founder of Bowhill Blueberries. That was incorrect. She is not one of the founders, but she is one of the owners of Bowhill Blueberry. So you will hear that in the intro as I introduce her on the podcast, and just know that I was off on that. But she is one of the owners. Her and her brother own Bowhill Blueberries, and their families run it now. And so we get into her background and her brother's background, and I thought what was really cool about talking with her and just hearing, and you just hear it throughout the entire podcast, and you'll be able to kind of listen in on this, is just her relationship with her brother. Just throughout their life, they just continually kind of cross paths and always are checking in with each other, and always, they like being around each other. I think it's really cool. I'm part of a family business to some degree. I mean, we're technically not Camano and Coffee and the Marketplace are technically two separate companies, but we operate as sister companies. And of course, my sister and brother-in-law own Camano and Coffee Roasters, while my wife and I own this one. So I just love seeing successful family-run businesses out there, and businesses where they run a business together and then they still like each other at the end of the day. So, which is the case for me as well. So don't be spreading rumors out there. But, anyways. I thought that was so awesome as we're listening, as I was interviewing her, just the continual conversations that her and her brother would have, and then finally it culminating in being able to partner on a business like this. So, and of course, you see Bowhill Blueberry everywhere. I mean, they're in our ice cream, which is after I did this podcast, shortly thereafter, I had to go get an ice cream with the Bowhill Blueberry flavor. But you've seen them in the grocery stores. You've seen them around. You've heard their names. You've maybe even done like the U-Pick. So they've been around the block. They took over in 2020, so fairly recently, and they hit some adversity right off the bat, and so you're going to hear about that as well. But they just continued to grow it and move forward, and so I'm excited that I got to have them on the podcast. And without further ado, here is my conversation with Audrey Matheson. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with one of the founders of Bowhill Blueberries. Welcome to the podcast, Audrey Matheson.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so before we get started, tell us a little bit about Audrey.
Well, my husband and I live in West Seattle. We recently moved in 2017 up to the Seattle area from Northern California.
Okay.
And we bought a fixer-upper there, so a lot about me is a lot about home projects right now.
Yep. Very cool. Where did you grow up?
So my brother and I, we grew up in Northern California.
Okay.
In the Sierra Valley.
Okay.
And so it was very rural, ranches on either side of us. Our family had about 5 acres, and we had chickens and a huge kitchen garden and the mountains right behind us.
Nice.
So it was a great childhood of like being outside.
Yep. Very cool. So then did you stay there throughout all high school and stuff like that then?
We actually moved to the Bay Area when I was starting high school and my brother was starting I guess he was in 5th grade, so almost middle school.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Did growing up in that environment, like at that time, was farming and all that something that you guys had thought about, or was it was kind of your life during that time?
It wasn't necessarily something that we thought about. It was just kind of the rural lifestyle of growing a lot of what you're eating and seeing like your neighbors be contributors to like the food system.
Mm-hmm.
Getting invited down to the neighbors to milk cows and slaughter steers and things like that.
Yeah.
That's not part of a typical childhood, I guess.
Right.
But, yeah.
So when you guys moved to the Bay Area then, did you guys still have a small like little garden or anything?
My parents always had chickens. So
Okay.
even in the suburbs of the Bay Area, we had, I think, at least 12 hens.
Okay.
And fresh eggs and having them out in the yard.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Nice. Very cool. So then as you were graduating high school, what were you kind of looking at for your career path?
I honestly was interested in a lot of things. Like education was one that I was looking into. Learning more about like what a career would be in as a teacher or in the nonprofit sector was
Mm-hmm.
definitely something that I was looking to go into.
Okay.
At that time.
Yeah. So did you end up going to school for that then?
Once I got to college, and actually my brother also had the same major. We were both poli-sci majors.
Okay.
At different schools.
Nice.
At different times, but I just got really interested in learning about like the history of other countries and different governmental structures and how that like plays into everyday life. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. So was that something that you were doing just on the side or with your major?
Yeah, so as a poli-sci major, I also was really interested in like what non-governmental groups were doing to sort of impact people's lives. And so that's kind of where my education steered me. So my first job was in the nonprofit sector once I graduated from college.
Okay.
And like since graduating, I looked into more educational opportunities to learn about nonprofit management and something more specific in that career path. Yeah.
Was there a specific sector? Because obviously nonprofits span a very large, span of all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Was there a certain kind of focus that you had?
I was really interested in sustainability and environmental nonprofits, things that were actually involve food a lot.
Okay.
So that kind of was steering me in that direction of like what sort of impact that I could make either in the nonprofit sector or possibly like with a nonprofit centered around farming or gardening.
Yeah. Okay. So then what was the nonprofit that you started working with then?
I started out at Universal Giving. They were kind of, they came up around sort of the same time as Global Giving, which is the one that people pretty know more about. But just that intersection of the new online landscape and how nonprofits can get matched with volunteers or donors.
Yep.
On that level.
Yeah. So then how did when you were doing this, was this something, did you continue on with them as you were doing your other, you said you went to get more education in nonprofit and all that stuff?
Yeah, it was, I graduated college around the time, shortly after, we as a country went into the housing crisis and everything, the housing bubble and the recession. So it was a difficult time for being in the nonprofit sector for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess while I was at that first job, I was really inspired by specifically nonprofits doing things with gardening or farming and how that was impacting people.
Okay.
So after I quit that job, I really started to think about what I could do in that space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Were you still in the Bay Area during this time then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That nonprofit was in San Francisco.
Okay.
So still in the Bay Area. And then I lived in Monterey and Santa Cruz, my husband and I, for quite a while.
Yep.
So got involved in some other nonprofits like Eco Farm. They put on the largest conference for organic farmers and organic producers and ranchers in January every year. So I began volunteering with them. I was involved with Slow Food Santa Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
Organizing for their edible garden tour. So I'm still involved in Slow Food up here in Seattle as well. I'm on the board.
Okay.
So
awesome. So I think my wife was just telling me a little bit about this concept because she's actually reading a book on it right now. But for those of our listeners who don't have an idea of that, can you kind of dive into that a little bit? What's the idea behind Slow Food and all of that?
I think it sort of began with a rejection of more fast food, sort of invading everybody's life, and just taking some of that power back and saying what's the ways that I can incorporate slowness when it comes to choosing what foods I'm eating, maybe growing some of what I'm eating.
Okay, nice. So how has that played out? Because it started kind of in the Bay Area, right? Or in California. I forget where.
I think actually Slow Food is started in Italy.
Italy, okay.
And then it grew into, it has a national nonprofit in the U.S. now too.
Okay.
But there's Slow Food International, and it
Got
all
it.
began in Italy. It's kind of like a rejection of McDonald's and things invading.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So what does the one in Seattle base, what's its kind of focus of being in there?
We're really, a lot of what we do is education and providing people with opportunities to learn more about local and sustainable food. Right now, we're really working on getting like the snail of approval program up and running in Seattle.
Okay.
Getting applications in from different food businesses or farms to sort of celebrate like what people are doing to promote local and good, clean, fair food for all. That's what the mission statement of Slow Food is.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's that involved in then for like a restaurant doing that? What does that involve for them? Like how do they have to? What are the steps they have to take to work towards that?
Well, it's just kind of taking each of those sort of categories and looking at what they're doing as far as clean, which usually means organic or like regenerative ingredients.
Okay.
Taking a look at how they're taking care of their people and their business. And good is obviously a little subjective, but it's like celebration of all different types of food and celebrations of culture and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you guys said you still live, or I guess, what kind of brought you guys up to Washington then? Because you guys had your family and everything down in California.
Yeah. So my husband's brother and his wife have lived in Seattle for a while, so they were up here. And then my sister-in-law, Ezra's wife, Emma, she is Canadian, but she grew up in Bellingham.
Okay.
So after Ezra and Emma got married, they moved up here as well. So we felt like we kind of wanted to be near family, so we sort of followed suit. And then shortly after that, my parents moved up to Bellingham.
Nice.
So we're all here now.
Very cool. That makes it easier.
Yeah.
So, very cool. So then, with moving up here, then, are you full time like with the nonprofit, or are you just kind of on the board of that?
I'm on the board of Slow Food Seattle, and full time at the farm, doing marketing and social media, and really as a small business owner, doing everything.
Yes.
As well, like so, Ezra and Emma are also full time at the farm.
Okay.
Emma's more like operations, and Ezra's the full time farmer. And then the goal is my husband works as a sports journalist, page designer, editor.
Okay.
So he gets to work from home right now, which is great. But eventually we hope to have space for all of us at the farm and in the business.
Yeah. So what kind of led you guys? Because you guys, I'm as we're going through your story, I'm like, what was the point that like, was Ezra always interested in farming, or how did this all kind of come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think after we were both done with college, and I was living in Santa Cruz, and he was in the Bay Area in Oakland, we decided to take an intensive, like, agroecology gardening program at UC Santa Cruz together.
Okay.
He had just like come back from sort of like grad program that took him to Palestine and the Middle East, and he had done like a project there that was involving farmers and I can't remember the name of what the system is, where you're taking like waste and making it into energy.
Okay.
It'll come to me. maybe.
Yeah, no, you're good.
But so he had just finished up a project and came back, and we took that class together, and we just like talked a lot about like hopefully maybe in the future sometime doing something in the sustainable food area, not really knowing what it would be.
Yeah.
So we've always been kind of on the lookout for something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, so then how did you guys hear about Bowhill, or like how did the land and all that come into play?
Sure. So Emma's dad actually, he's always very like on the lookout for new projects, and he was looking through the real estate listings, and he found that and sent it to all of us, and we all kind of sat down and were like, this is a very interesting opportunity. It's 2020, we're in the middle of a pandemic. There's a lot of changes. I feel like a lot of people sort of had that quiet time to think about what's important and what they want to do next.
Yeah.
And we just kind of took a leap and like decided to put in an offer. The business itself was really interesting. The farm was obviously beautiful, and like I don't know what's cuter than a blueberry. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
So did you say that this was during the pandemic then? Mm-hmm. Okay, so when did you guys
Yeah.
officially purchase the business then?
We officially purchased the business in November 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we got some mentorship from the previous owners over like a month or so, which was really great to have. And then it was just kind of a pretty steep learning curve from there.
Yeah.
That's still happening.
Yeah, you guys are pretty fresh in this still.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was Ezra doing then during this time before you guys ended up buying the farm?
Yeah, so he and Emma were basically renovating their house in Bellingham. Ezra had previously helped my parents. My parents have always been rehabbers and kind of, I wouldn't say flippers. I don't think my mom would like that very much because she takes everything like design and all of that into consideration. But she and my dad have always like done fixer-upper projects, and
Yep.
they did a house in the Bay Area from like the ground up, and my brother was involved in that, so we learned a lot about construction and plumbing and electrical and all of those things.
Yes.
So he kind of took that to the house that Emma and himself had bought in Bellingham.
Okay.
So
Nice. So they were
fixed
just
it
kind
up
of getting
and,
done with
like,
that project.
Getting done with it, selling it. So we were kind of in a space where we could take advantage of an opportunity like this.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
So was there something so you guys hadn't been really like looking for something. It kind of sounds like Emma's father had kind of just been looking around and found something and kind of off a
Yeah.
whim, and then kind of built from there.
Mm-hmm. And I think with the pandemic, Emma's job had sort of been phased out.
Okay.
I myself was let go from my job that I had in Seattle at the time because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So a lot of things were changing, and like it didn't seem, I guess, as intimidating or scary to like start something new because
Everything was new at this point?
Everything's new. So
Yeah. So then, had you at your previous jobs? Then had you started kind of working in like the marketing department and stuff? Had you started building skill set in that?
Yeah, definitely. I think at each of my jobs, I had been so at small nonprofits, I'd been involved in really like all of the hats.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was really helpful. At my previous job in Seattle, I was the operations manager for a organic skincare company.
Okay.
But that was also a small family business.
Yeah.
So you kind of get experience in all of the different areas, which
Yep.
is exciting to me. Like
Yeah.
I like to learn new things all the time. So.
Yes. And you will in business.
Yes. Continue to each day.
Yes. Well, and that's, I think, there are different people that are cut out for different types of positions or different companies and things like that. Like my background is mechanical engineering, so I worked with.
That's the same as my sister-in-law, Emma.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I worked with like companies like Boeing or things like that. These giants that these people that are working in them, they know what they're going to get every day. They know what their work is. They come out, and they enjoy that because then they get to focus on everything else that's going on in their life. But I remember being like, okay, there needs to be something, like, is there something, a new project or something to jump on?
Yeah.
So my dad's always been a serial entrepreneur, and so
awesome.
Finally, after a few years, 5 years in the engineering field, joined up with him on some projects and was like, okay, now it's like, that was like going from like very straightforward to very dynamic, and nothing is ever the same.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I kind of enjoyed that, having all of that going on. And so.
Yeah, it's great. It keeps you young, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So very cool. So then, so do you commute up to the farm every day, or mainly work from home?
Not every day. I'm definitely at the farm a couple days a week, and I stay there, so I'm not commuting back and forth. And we're entering into harvest, so Andrew has taken some time off of his day job, and we're all going to be there at the farm pretty much for 6 weeks straight.
Wow.
While we get the harvest in. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And then, do you guys? I'm terribly uneducated when it comes to farming and stuff like that. Do blueberries, are they handpicked, or do you guys have some machinery tools?
It's a combination. So anything that we're going to sell fresh or frozen to consumers is going to be handpicked.
Okay.
So we do have professional pickers that have been doing this a long time and are very fast. They do handpick on our farm, and then we also have a harvester, which is an over-the-row harvester. So it's kind of cool. It goes the rows in between, and then it goes like along the row, over the top, and sort of tickles the bushes. Okay. And the berries fall into these cups that bring them up to the lugs.
Okay.
So
nice.
And that would be the berries that we're going to be using for our value add products mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, and so when you guys were kind of looking at the Bowhill, because I think, I think a lot of people, especially in this area, would recognize the Bowhill Blueberry name because you guys are in stores. You're in, because you guys have such a varied product line.
Yeah.
When you guys were kind of looking at the farm and the business and everything, what was kind of like, did you get to talk to the owners about like how they kind of came up with some of these things and how to continue them on and all that?
Yeah, and they did a great job of developing the product line that we basically inherited, and they worked with a food scientist in Seattle to develop like the low sugar blueberry confiture and the pickles. So we did have discussions with them about like the possibilities of what new products could be. And I think as we have sort of sat with everything, we definitely want to be very like intentional about like what we do next with products, and if we're going to add anything. I think because of our smaller scale, like unless we were to get another like 40 acres of blueberry somehow, like we want to like celebrate the berries that we have in the best way possible, and I think sometimes that comes with less is more, you know.
Yeah. No, for sure. And we have we actually carry the Lopez Island Creamery, the Bowhill Blueberry ice cream, and I remember the first time trying that, because blueberry ice cream is not like a common flavor.
Yeah.
It's not one of your normal ones you get.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember having it the first time. I was like, wow, this is like an amazing ice cream because, Lopez does such a great job with all of their processes.
Mm-hmm.
And just, it's so cool to have like a local, ice cream offering.
Yeah. We definitely get people into the farm store all the time, or like stop you at the farmer's market and make sure that they get some of that ice cream, because it's super delicious, and I think it really celebrates like the ingredients that go into it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So then, how has, because I've been talking with different farmers and stuff from this year, how has, we've kind of had a slower, like colder spring and everything. How has that kind of affected you guys and the farming community that you guys are connected to?
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot different from our first harvest and our first year growing the blueberries. For example, like we started harvesting July 17th, I want to say, last year.
Okay.
And we're just going to be starting to harvest today.
Okay.
This year. So definitely pushes back the harvest. And really during the springtime, you're looking for at least some like non-windy, semi-sunny weather for the bees to want to come out and do the pollination that has to happen is with our blueberries. So we didn't really get as great of a pollination period as we did the previous year. So that obviously affects a lot of gardeners and farmers and what they're able to get as far as when it comes to the harvest.
Yeah.
So we've heard a lot of things from other farmer friends that the cold and the wet they've had to like restart their plant starts, delay putting things in the ground because it's too wet, and you don't want to be like going out there with a tractor because you're just going to get stuck.
Yes, yeah.
That like those mold and like fungal diseases really are more prevalent when you don't get that spring warmth that you're used to. So
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so crazy. Like I think I probably say this to all the farmers I've interviewed or spoken with, but like farming is such a I talked to one farmer and he said you have to be an optimist to be a farmer, because like you have to put in all of this work up front, but then whether it does well or not isn't even based on you. You have to do your part, but then you're based on weather and all the other factors and market value and all that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that you can't control.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Very cool. So most people I think have seen a lot of your different products, but just so people are aware of them, what are kind of your different, apart from just blueberries, what are kind of your product offerings that you guys have?
Yeah, so I think probably one that maybe people have come across either like in PCC or Hagen is our juice. It's our 100% blueberry juice, cold pressed. And that's definitely one of the things that before we bought the farm, we were like tasting a bunch of different blueberry juice, and there's not a ton out there that's organic and 100% blueberry. And even before we bought the farm, we were like, this is an exceptional juice. Like it's very different than what's already out there. So that was intriguing.
Yeah. Awesome. What other things you mentioned the confiture, right? Yeah,
the confiture is kind of a French style low sugar preserve with our blueberries, and this for 2022 we just won a Good Food Award for that product.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of people really love that jam, and I am one of them. I think it's really really like subtle and celebrates the blueberries, and so so we've got that, and we've got our heirloom pickled blueberries, which have converted a lot of like trepidatious pickle people. I love to see people taste it for the first time because they're very unsure of like what this is going to taste like.
Yeah, I can't even imagine right now what that would be like.
And it just like walks that line of like sweet and savory, and you can use it in a more savory way, or even put it on like ice cream. Like Frankie and Joe's kind of took that inspiration, and they have our blueberries in their seasonal flavor. That's pickled blueberry ice cream that they have in their stores right now.
Okay.
Which I think is delicious. But yeah, it's a really cool, like, interesting product.
Yeah.
And then to go along with our juice, we have our blueberry powder, which is actually like a no-waste product, because when we cold press our juice, we take the pulp and dehydrate it and mill it for the powder. So
Okay.
there's less sugar in there, but all of the fiber and the nutrition that comes from the skins of the blueberries. 'Cause
Wow.
that's essentially where all of the nutrition is in blueberries and in a lot of like fruits and vegetables, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. And for the powder, is it just like a nutritional thing? Like, do you just throw it in like a shake or something if you were making it? Like
Yeah, it has like a
protein shake?
subtle like blueberry flavor, a little sweetness. I personally bake with it a lot, but yeah, people throw it in smoothies and overnight oats, and I like to put it in like pancakes and waffles.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I've even put it in like veggie chili. It gives like a little sweetness to the spice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Nice. So then, so you guys have all the different blueberry style products and stuff, and you've mentioned that you don't really want to add a new product unless you have a real intention or purpose for it.
Yeah. I think one of the first things we were thinking about is because of the process of cold pressing our juice, we do have a ton of pulp and powder. And besides selling that as a product, I think I'm just like putting this out in the universe. Maybe it will happen, like get some collaborators on this. But doing like a Skagit pancake mix with the blueberry powder and some of the local wheat and
Yes.
grains that we have here.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, which would be really cool.
That'd be great. It'd be a healthy pancake, too.
Yeah, a healthy pancake. Yeah.
Very cool. So then, like we mentioned, you're pretty fresh into all of this then. What are just so far some of the biggest lessons you guys have already learned about the farm and stuff since taking over?
I don't know. I think that we had to sort of face like adversity right away, kind of like 11 months or 10 months into owning the farm. We had a fire in our production facility. And so like just kind of being able to take the time and be intentional again about like what we bring back and like how we bring it back.
Yeah.
But it just kind of blew up the entire like way of things were done on the farm.
Wow.
Not having that facility and having to figure out like how can we still make our products, and how are we going to run like this business going forward.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's something that any like small business owner really wants to deal with in like the first 11 months. But you know, things happen in life, and you have to figure out how to deal with them.
Yeah.
In an intentional way. So
Yeah. What was that for you guys? What did that feel? I can't imagine like what that must have felt like for you guys, of just seeing that during that happened and then afterwards just like sitting in that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of gratitude that no one was hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and like we still have all of our blueberries, and but I think you kind of sit in that like devastation for a little bit, and then you have to figure out what to do next. And I think there's an importance in like feeling all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think, as you guys are stepping into this as business owners now, like you have this piece to you of, you always have this almost like you've already burned the boats. Like you have to move forward.
Sure.
There's not this choice of like, well, I guess I got to go get another job, or like you're here.
Mm-hmm. We're here. We're committed to it. We think that like there's an opportunity to, make things the way that we would do things. I know that in life it's like very hard sometimes to get off of something that's like already moving forward in a certain way. And so, yeah, it just kind of gave us that pause. I don't think I would recommend it, but it did give us a pause and like to reevaluate things.
Yeah. Well, we were, so my wife and I had been working in the business prior to, but we officially closed on this business at the end of 2019, so November of 2019, and then rolled into 2020. We're like, okay, this is going to be a good year. We're going to get started. And it was a little bit like that, especially being retail, like, retail was all shut down. And but it was kind of going through those steps of like, okay, like we've made the decision, we're here, so we've got to make the best of what we're in. So what can we do? Because you don't have that decision to back out and just walk away.
Right.
So. And
I think luckily, I'm sure that like you have people that like are supporting you along the way. Mm-hmm. So it's always helpful to have like those outside people that are like pushing you forward.
Yeah. Well, and I think helping
you pivot.
Yes. And I think Skagit has this because we saw that locally. Camano really had it as well. The community surrounded the small business community, the people, and really supported them in whatever ways they could. They were stuck at home too, so we did phone orders, we did pick up outside, we even made a few deliveries, and but the community really was there to say, we're still here with you.
Yeah, I think that's really special about this area. It seems like a lot of people are really committed to local and local food and local entrepreneurs. So it doesn't seem like it's like anyone's in competition with each other. It's all like, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this happen? So.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right, so then what do you guys see as kind of the future for the farm then?
I think the future of the farm is it's pulling on like a lot of our previous experiences, wanting to make the farm a place of where it's providing like education to people, education to customers, education to people that want to come take a farm tour and learn more about blueberries or organic agriculture. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the things that we definitely want to focus on in the future, as well as continuing to steward these plants that are actually like, some of them are turning 75 this year.
Wow.
So
cool.
They're old and they're still going. So it's a celebration.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, we like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months?
I love vintage things and thrifting things, so it's kind of a tie between a thrifted like button-up top that I bought from a friend who does like a vintage pop-up, or this Emma and I went into Penny Lane Antiques up in Bellingham.
Okay.
And we both found this snail planter, and I'm super excited to put a plant in it. So
very cool. That's awesome. Who is the most influential person outside of your family in your life?
This is sort of a hard question. I think I'm inspired by a lot of people that like have passion for what they're doing. Like I think I would say like Jose Andreas of World Central Kitchen is really inspiring. Someone like Alexis, I don't know if you've followed the Black Forager on Instagram, but she just won like a James Beard Award. But she is really passionate about foraging and like bringing that education to people about like what's around them, what you can eat out there.
Yeah, very cool. So. Yeah, my wife does a lot of. She homeschools our 4 kids, and so we've got. She does a lot of like research on. She's grown up going through nature and kind of seeing the plants you're able to eat and all the different things you can do.
Yeah.
She's done herbal things and. But me, on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know if you can eat that or not. And so anytime my kid has a berry, I'm like, don't eat that. They're like, no, it's okay. It's a da-da-da. I'm like, are you sure?
Well, her tagline always in her videos is like, have fun, don't die.
Yes.
Which is hilarious to me. But it's sort of like, it brings me back to my childhood of like having parents that wanted to give us a connection to like the place that we lived. So this was the 80s and 90s, so
yes.
We had to like carry the identification books on hikes and things like that,
right.
Building character, like learning those things out in nature. So.
Yes. Very cool. All right, this is a fill in the blank question. I know this is weird, but I've always wanted to blank.
I'm not sure how weird it is, but I definitely wanted to try I think it's parasailing, what they do like off of sort of the oyster dome.
Yes.
Yeah. We've seen people like floating by the farm and landing. That just seems like something that I really want to try.
Okay. Do you have a fear of heights or any of that?
No. Ezra and I actually, we just talked about like our experience. We went skydiving together. A family friend was like really into it, and he'd done it like hundreds of times. So he took us in the Central Valley of California.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say like I would do it again necessarily, but it was an awesome experience.
Yeah. Very cool. Who is an interesting or fascinating person that I should interview next?
Oh, there's so many interesting people in this area. Like, I was thinking about our farm manager at the farm. He and his wife, Mara Silva, have their own farm business, Silva Family Farms, out in Oak Harbor, and they also have land at Viva Farms. And they are like incredible people. They have so much like knowledge about plants and growing things, and picking like the most delicious varieties. So they're very cool and interesting people. Christy at Junebug Ferments, she's doing really cool things with fermented like probiotic drinks and krauts. And then there's Rachel at Water Tank Bakery. She's like right next door to Cairn Spring Mill.
Okay.
So she's using a lot of local ingredients in her really delicious breads. So
nice.
Those are just some people, I guess.
Perfect. That's great. And lastly, what piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
I think that this is sort of, I think, advice that you get all throughout your life, but I think you kind of have to keep reminding yourself of, like, tomorrow's not promised, and you kind of have to, like, keep in the now, because I think we spend a lot of time, especially like in your 20s, I think you're like thinking ahead so much that you're not like in the moment.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's very cool. So there was one more thing, normally that's where I end, but there's one more thing that I wanted to touch on, because you've mentioned it so many times throughout the podcast, and I think it's really neat. Just to talk about real quick, you and Ezra's relationship as brother and sister, because I don't think every brother and sister would be up for going into business with each other. So how has that kind of evolved over time? were you always close friends as kids?
We were definitely like always close friends as kids. I think growing up in a rural area where we had the brother and sister that lived down the street as on the ranch next door, but really like there's not a lot of people around, so you kind of have to forge that friendship, which is, I think, really helpful to have in adult life. You know? But yeah, we've always been close and like interested in similar things, and enjoy each other's company. So
yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool that you guys have that relationship.
Yeah.
All right, and lastly, tell the listeners where they can find you.
Sure. Well, we're heading into harvest, so we will be at our usual Seattle farmers markets at the University District on Saturdays, and Ballard on Sundays with fresh and like all of our value-added products. And our farm store is going to be open a wider range of hours during harvest too, so people can stop by Monday, like 7 days a week, and get some fresh blueberries.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and I think we should be heading back into some more wholesale, like in PCC and Hagen, sometime soon. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
It was really my pleasure. It was really fun.
Awesome. All right. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Audrey Matheson for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to tomatocommons.com/podcast. That's tomatocommons.com/podcast. Thanks for listening.